But as a student, you can, join a lot of like those different entities, at a minimal cost to essentially see what's going to work for you.
Do you ever have so many questions and no one to ask, so they're just wasting away on Google searches you'll forget about in an hour or so?
We had that same problem, and that's why we created the RD2BE podcast, a resource for dietetic and nutrition students looking for answers that their peers don't have.
We are students Macy and Emily and registered dietitian Carl Barnes. We engage in conversations and learn from RDs.
Join us weekly as we gain insight into the unique journeys of registered dietitians all over the country.
Welcome to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your registered dietitian host, Carl Barnes. This is our podcast where each week we sit down with another awesome registered dietitian to kind of profile their career path, their advice to you as a nutrition student, and really just to highlight the diversity of opportunity in the profession. There are so many different paths you can take. My personal life goal is to destroy this notion of there being a traditional path in dietetics. So this week we have a lot of students actually that are very interested in school nutrition, working with kids and just that kind of environment. So we're sitting down with Christine Cliff. She works in school nutrition, lots of stuff under that umbrella. So
Yes.
without further ado, thank you so much for being here. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit better.
Oh, you did a great job. So thank you for having me. As Carl so nicely mentioned, I am in school nutrition right now. So, my name is Christine Cliff. I work in School District U46, which is the second largest school district here in Illinois, outside of Chicago Public Schools. We have 55 total schools, 41 of which are elementary and the remainder being secondary. And we have a couple of PKs, locations peppered in there as well. It's been an interesting road his last year, actually 18 months in school nutrition. It's definitely taken on a different spin thanks to COVID. So it's a great space to work in. I think a lot of people don't think about, school nutrition when they're going into dietetics. I know back in the day when I was going through my undergrad, it was clinical or it was just basic food service. There really wasn't a lot of emphasis on school nutrition. So I'm happy to give more input on that and answer any questions people may have.
Great. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to us. As always, I'm Emily, your RD2BE from University of Maryland. So what kind of volunteer experiences or undergraduate experiences did you have that you think have helped you set up, for what you wanted to do?
Okay, well, there was always the notion, even just starting from my master's program, is volunteer. Get involved, network. In Illinois, we have, and actually in all the states, they have local affiliates of the academy. So I was a member from the get-go as a student with the West Suburban Academy. Actually, it was West Suburban Dietetic Association at the time. Now it's been renamed to West Suburban Academy, Nutrition and Dietetics, with that name change. So starting from the get-go and just dipping my toe in and seeing where I can get involved. Actually, I started as a historian and I was a very green dietitian, and it was a matter of just taking pictures at meetings. So, that's just you just start somewhere. Be open to new opportunities and be able to network with the dietitians in your area, and you never know what doors are going to be open from that. So I know there are the local affiliates is one way to get involved as a student. 'Cause we do have a big student member base in Illinois, and we actually started last year as a pathway to leadership in Illinois, trying to bring in the dietetic students from the variety of different programs in the state and showing them different entities of how they can get involved, and being able to shadow all the various positions within our state organization. So hoping maybe other states can do that as well.
How has that looked during the pandemic? Students being like shadowing and stuff like that?
Shadow virtually, actually. It's Zoom has been our saving grace with that, quite honestly. I was the president of the academy, our Illinois Academy, when COVID hit. So that was interesting. And so we had to quickly pivot, and we had at the time WebEx, and now we're using the Zoom platform. So we have looped our students in within our meetings for the various committees using that Zoom platform.
What opportunities do you think it provides for students opposed to, other avenues of just being, I guess, I don't want to say a regular member, but a regular member of the academy?
With the student pathway to leadership for our students in Illinois, they actually they worked closely with each of like the big committees. So like we had what we call CPI, so the committee for essentially it's a planning committee for our state assembly. We have our public policy committees. So they actually were a member. They had like a 3-month rotation on each of these main committees within the organization, and they actually worked hands-on, even with the media team. So we gave those students like, okay, here's, pick a month and, come up with, a handful of like Instagram posts, Facebook posts, tweets that we wanted to do this, and even did a media pitch. So it's a lot of hands-on activity so they can get some kind of real life experience working in leadership and alongside the leaders of the state.
Awesome. That
Yeah.
sounds great. And like a great resource for students.
Yeah.
So I know that you have a bachelor's in elementary education and nutrition and dietetics. So what
Yes.
made you want to get both opposed to one or the other?
Well, that's fun. My parents loved the day when I said I didn't want to be a teacher. Yeah, I was in student teaching at the time. I was a senior. I was a few weeks from graduating. I love educating. I am an educator by profession and in trade and such. So just use it in a different way. Um, I think at the time when you're just trying to find that and what may fit for you, what you think would fit, and in college, and I thought being a traditional teacher would be that way, and just knowing myself, and I'm like I can't see myself being in a classroom teaching English, even though I'm married to a teacher. He's upstairs right now, so I'm married to a teacher. Um, I didn't want to be a traditional classroom teacher, so I finished my degree. I still have my certificate, so if I ever do want to go into the classroom, I can. But I married that knowing that I still had like that passion for nutrition always kind of in the background. A funny story, I actually did start in University of Georgia in nutrition, and then I went to education now and went back to nutrition. So knowing that I still had the passion, wanting to pursue nutrition and dietetics, I went back for that bachelor's of science. Took me like 18 or so months to get that second degree, and then I transitioned. I got that Mph master's. I got into the master's program at Benedictine. But I marry the two. I educate with nutrition as that focus versus English and literature. So.
Yeah. So what made you want to do an MPH opposed to like an MS?
It was actually one of the few programs at the time, that the Mph program, that it was a unique way to use my degree. It's another way to educate the public and the community. I did know I didn't want to go into like a traditional clinical setting. So the MPH really kind of drew me in because it had a community nutrition focus. At the time, Benedictine offered, that was the only master's program married with a dietetic internship. But what kind of drew me in was that community nutrition focus, knowing I wanted to, okay, I have that education degree, I want to use it, and it seemed like a more clear path for me at the time. And I'm so glad I did it. It's a unique degree to have in this profession.
Did you look at any regular internships without masters, or were you gung ho on doing your masters with your
I
internship?
did not want to do my master's at the time, as I was tapped out. I've already gone through 2 degree programs, 2 bachelors, and I'm like, I was done with school. I was a matter of just what program could I get into. As you probably are going to be finding out, trying to get matched was a challenge. I actually applied to 4 programs during that initial round of matching. It was not a happy day when I did not match that first round. And so I had to reapply for that second round of matching in the summertime. So was matched to NIU, where I got my bachelor's from, and also Benedictine. Wanting a different experience, so I chose to go with the Benedictine route, not only for that, a different experience, but also that MPH program. I was done. Knowing that I would be done with the master's, the research, and the dietetic internship in 18 months. versus the MS program at the time at NIU. You took a few classes, but you have to finish your degree on your own. You wouldn't be, having it'd be a lot more like on your own time. And I probably wouldn't have gone back and finished the master's if I went that route.
Definitely. So I know that Benedictine now offers an Mph Mba program.
Mhm.
So had you, gone to school at Benedictine when they had that option, do you think you would have gone with that, or do you still think you would have gone with the Mph route?
Probably would have done the MPH. And they actually, quite honestly, they also have an MSNW rotation. If they had had that at the time, I probably would have done the MSNW versus the MPH. Just it's still more the nutrition and wellness, that wellness aspect of community nutrition. Regardless, I still think getting that master's it sets you apart from other people that just have that undergrad degree at the time. Now we know we're going to be transitioning to where the master's is going to be mandatory at that entry level. I'm hoping our compensation goes up a little bit at that entry level to compensate for that.
Definitely. And then I know that you were an adjunct professor at Benedictine. So what made you do that? Was that a part of your master's? Was it just to get some teaching experience, or what was that?
It was just get extra money. That was first and foremost. I mean, you'll discover that some of these salaries as being especially in community nutrition are not super high. So I just wanted, at the time I was doing, I was working at Illinois Nutrition Education and Training. So it was, again, it's actually was working with schools, K-12 throughout the state, providing nutrition education. I thought it was a nice, added, I don't want to say added bonus, but a nice extra experience going into the collegiate level, being able to teach nutrition. Actually, it was nutrition education research was the main focus when I was at Benedictine. I did graduate classes as well as the undergrad classes for a couple of years.
So why didn't you want to continue doing that?
If I wanted to continue at a collegiate level, I had to get a PhD. And that's if you want to you could do adjunct work with like your master's. I do have a couple friends, really close friends that did get their PhD because you have to be tenured. You have to be a PhD level to actually get a tenured at a university level. And that's not the way I wanted to go. I really like being within the community and having more hands-on than just talking about it. I think you have to have what you feel more passionate about doing.
Definitely. So I guess to transition a little bit, what do you do as a nutrition affairs director at Dairy
The Dairy Council?
Dairy Management Inc.
When I was with National Dairy Council, DMI, yes, the parent company, Dairy Management Inc. My main role there was being the liaison between National Dairy Council, because we did do a lot of education, not just talking about dairy nutrition. We did talk about all the food groups, but the focus where we were at the time was child nutrition, and then where our objectives and mission intertwined, and with health professional organizations. So I was in charge of the collaboration between the American Academy of Pediatrics, so AAP, American Academy of Family Physicians, National Medical Association, which is actually the African American entity of American Medical. And I also NHMA, so it's National Hispanic Medical Association, and then SNEB, so Society of Nutrition, Education, and Behavior. So I was like the go-between between National Dairy Council and then those health professional organizations. That was one part of my role. We also helped with actually schools at the time working with our Fuel to Play 60 program, and then we started talking about food insecurity, quite honestly, and how we can address that. And we actually worked with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So I had a lot of different roles of that position. Got to travel a lot, which was fun. So yeah, it was a great experience. Our bosses were dairy farmers, which is close to my heart since I have dairy farming in my family. So I essentially told my uncle Scott, who was a dairy farmer, I'm like, well, you're my boss right now. So that was really a lot of fun to be able to work on behalf of the dairy farmers of America.
Definitely. And then what about Nourish to Flourish? What was that?
That I had a private practice. I was nutrition consulting for a couple years. So I was as we transition between different entities within our career, trying to find just another unique spaces to be able to work. And I wanted to try like my hand in having just a private practice. I didn't want it to be my full-time job, so just kind of having it on the side and being able to counsel people that had food sensitivities. So my credential of CLT. Is a certified leap therapist. So working with people that had food sensitivities, and there was a certain test that I was able to offer them to see what foods are they sensitive to. Um, and then also there's food allergies, working with special needs, because when I was working with Bluebird Day, IS Landing, I worked with special needs children, so people that have autism, dysphagia, and such. So I wanted to take that knowledge that I had and being able to help, the parents and like actually really young kids that had those challenges, literally going into their home. But this is of course before COVID. So I'd be, driving around to everyone's home and being able to offer my services to them. So yeah, it was a good couple years. At the time when I started it, I wasn't working as many hours at Bluebird Day and IS Landing, so I had more time to dedicate to it. But when I got working more with Dominican and then with Bon Appetit, my hours ramped up, my travel ramped up with my job, so I just transitioned to phase that out.
Yeah. So from my understanding, things like Bon Appetit, Nourish to Flourish, and your job at IS Landing involved school-age children. So does that have anything to do with, your passion for teaching or?
Yeah, with nutrition, I've always had that education in the back of my head.
Mhm.
I always want to educate and focusing on nutrition, health and wellness. With the Nourish to Flourish, there's also weight management that I did. I went through the Academy's childhood and adult weight management programs several years ago. So again, it's another way to educate and try to make it understandable to the community and to the public. I'm taking these really high level concepts and how can we simplify it and make it, break it down into, nutrition nuggets, shall we say, and understandable information.
Is there any particular reason why you were interested in elementary school children opposed to middle or high school?
I'm interested in all children. So yeah, I mean, um, I think it's how the cards fall. IS Landing, that was actually a brand new experience where and they were just the very young kids. I mean, Head Start was young. When I worked with Illinois Net, that was K-12. Of course, Bon Appetit was university level. So actually, I've worked even with the elderly when I was at the convalescent center on my first job. So I've worked with the very, very young to the very young at heart. So it's educating anybody. It doesn't. I don't have a specific age group that I loved or hate. So
Yeah. And then, so I knew that you were the past president for Illinois for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So what do you think that position has helped you with?
knowing how to pivot really quickly. No, actually, it was leadership and being able to guide our members, especially during the challenging time of COVID. I'm really just being there for support for them, just really showing them how, okay, as a profession, we're still here for you. Because a lot of our members were, whether they were furloughed, they were let go, just being that sounding board and, okay, we're here, to help you like get back on your feet. And also still here to help educate you. Carl, I'm right there with you as far as providing things that know at a minimal cost. So how could we do that for our members because we had to transition and we had our assembly that was planned for in person. So knowing that we still had, we want to provide some education to the members at low cost, we were able to break that down into small little mini sessions and offer it to them. I think they're maybe like $15 each. So it was pretty affordable, knowing that people's budgets were really small. So still being able to be a good service and steward to our membership. That was a big learning curve, for that year.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So for people like myself who don't really understand the steps to becoming the president of, a certain area for the Academy, what does that look like?
Well, going back to one of your first questions, volunteering. Just saying yes to opportunities within the profession. Just learning, being a sponge, and networking with some of the dietitians within your area. Because as I think when I mentioned, one of my first roles in with West Suburban was just being the historian, pulling together PowerPoints for your showcasing of different meetings, and then it went up from there, and just rolling the dice and like putting your name out there on the ballot. It's kind of scary when you're going up against somebody. Like, well, I hope somebody votes for me. And I've been pretty lucky being able to be elected in various positions at the local level, and then you're like, okay, where can I help at the state level? My first state position was working with the Bulletin. I was just the Bulletin editor for a few years, so your name's out there, and people get to know you, um, and just being reliable with whatever position you choose. Doesn't matter how small it is, you want to do it well, and then people can rely on you, and then they start asking you to do more. Sometimes you do have to say no if your plate gets too full, but initially just starting, like, just being open to new opportunities.
So, what are the different roles between the president and the immediate past president?
um, Well, I mean, the immediate past president was more of a support. You're there to offer, like, background and history, supporting not only the president at the with whatever he or she may need, with various entities, and also being there to service the president elect, the incoming. Um, this year, or actually this last year, the president, Julie Patterson, she kind of restructured everything with Illinois Academy. So she gave a lot of those elected positions different roles, or we oversaw different committees. So the immediate past presidents, my responsibility was helping with the strategic planning, as well as of the bylaws and policy procedure updates. So, overseeing that committee with those updates. Some of the other elected positions oversaw other committees. So, but for the immediate past president, I mean, it was a lot of it was just support. And like, where else can I be a sounding board? If you need some, if taking a load off the president, because there's a lot of responsibility in that position, and just trying to make it manageable for him or her.
Most definitely. So, what are some things that, made you want to say, yes, I do want to become the president. I want to run for that position? It's not, because I know it's not an easy load.
No, it took some time to, it wasn't like right away. Um, because was asked a few years before that when I actually ran, and I think just being ready and just ready and confident, and like knowing that you can do it. So it took. I mean, I was the bulletin editor, and then I was CPI. So I was the CPI chair, chair elect, and then chair, and then continue to be just helping with the different committees at the time. So really just continue to be involved in building up that confidence in that leadership role at a larger level. I was the president with the West Suburban group, but that was several years ago, and that was obviously a lot smaller membership. But again, just kind of still just keeping my toe dipped into that leadership role in whatever capacity, and just I say rip off the band-aid and just let's go for it and see what happens.
Mhm.
Leading on your support system too. We had a great executive director who's been with our organization for 20 plus years. So knowing that Terry's going to be there, I'm like, Terry, you cannot quit because we need your support. And also you have other committee members too. Just know you're not there to do it alone. It is not my organization, it's the members' organization. So we keeping that top of mind as well.
So, do you work with, other states at all, or is it just your state that you are working with?
When I was president-elect, the academy had an affiliate training, president affiliate training. So I got to meet a lot of the other presidents, our incoming presidents for the other state affiliates. So we had it was kind of a communication board, online communication board. And so we would reach out if we had questions, essentially like, what are we getting ourselves into? What are you guys doing? And learning from each other. That helped a lot. And also just staying connected through, I'm still connected with a lot of them on social media. So knowing that you had some sounding boards in other states, case in point, with lady up in Wisconsin, also Michigan, and knowing that they've transitioned to, instead of local Our local affiliates they're standalone right now, but a lot of the states have gone to regions where you don't have to have a fully elected board on each of these small little entities. Because right now what we're challenged with on the local level is the limited amount of leadership, limited amount of people that want to get involved or can get involved. So how can we still get people, keep them involved, provide them with the education they need, and make it manageable. So that's where the regions come into play. So we're learning from Wisconsin, we learned from Michigan, how do they do it well? We learned how to not do it by one other state I'm not going to name. But so it's nice to have those sounding boards, and that's one way that actually that social media can help, as well as like the communication board within the state affiliates.
So how much does the ideals between state to state, the presidents, how much does it differ? Like, are there a lot of people where it's like you guys are on the same page, you guys have the same vision for, what's going on, what you want to do during your term, or is it, totally opposite sides of the spectrum?
I think from what I saw at the training that I was at, a lot of us were on similar paths. I think we all really wanted just to be there and serve the members of our state and do it the best way that we could. There are maybe some others that we were divided up into various groups throughout the day and a half training. Not saying that we never would, not we wouldn't always agree on things, but a lot of the people that I was, connected to, I think a lot of like, at the base, y'all want to be able to serve the members in the best way you can. Trying to keep in mind that it's not my association, it's the members association. That's really what I try to keep in the forefront when I was president.
Mhm. And then how many terms, or like what's the term? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? What does that look
It's a
like?
total of three. Three, I can do my fingers. Because you have your president-elect year, then you have your transition to your presidency year, and then past president. And then so I transitioned off past president on, June 1st was my first day off the past presidency. So it's a total of 3 years in this state. Now, I think it was Tennessee, they completely redid how their presidency worked. And I think theirs was actually 4 years. That's a bigger, yeah, I can see your eyes, Carly. Like that's a bigger ask. I was kicking around, like, can we make that work? So there's actually it'd be 2 years as president. We chose not to go that route because it's hard enough to get people to commit for 3 years, quite honestly. So again, trying to make it manageable to keep the leaders involved and actually get our leaders on the ballot.
Are presidents able to rerun later on, or are they only allowed to have their one term?
I think you can rerun. There was one lady when I was going through the training. I want to say it was Virginia. I think she was president several years before that, but you have to give some time in between. Right now, I just transitioned on to the Northern Delegate in Illinois, and I know we can do, and there's a 3-year term. We can do 2 3-year terms consecutively. Then we'd have to give a break in between. So probably something similar. But I don't. As far as our call and our policy procedures, I think you can rerun again. I think you have to give some time in between.
And then I know you kind of said that it's kind of hard to have people commit to that 3 years. So do you have people that actively want to become president, or sometimes is it a little bit harder to get people to put their name on the ballot? How does that look?
Depends on the year. The year I ran, it was actually a competitive ballot. It was me plus another person. Sometimes it is harder just in general filling the ballot. Because people's time is so limited. There's so much going on in their personal life, and it's trying to make it appealing and trying to make it doable. Because a lot of the time when I get asked if you're trying to recruit and promote the positions open, is what is the time commitment? And it's really hard depending on the position, depending on the time of year. You may have more phone calls, you may have more emails to address, but it is a challenge, and that's really why we want to try to make it doable and feasible for the leaders. Trying to make, as we did a revamp of our bylaws and policy procedures, looking at the position descriptions. How can we simplify it as much as we can and still keep the core of that position true? But it's not easy,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah. So I guess transitioning from the academy and going into your current job as a
Okay.
district registered dietitian and compliance specialist, what do
Mhm.
you do on like a day-to-day basis?
Pre-COVID? Okay,
I guess we could do
okay, well,
pre-COVID
I'm
and then
can,
post.
just to kind of be transparent here, I was on the job 3 weeks and then COVID hit and shut down. That was fun. So from pre-COVID, I mean, regardless, I mean, I'm still, I work hand in hand with our food service director, and now we have an assistant food service director creating the menus. Always good to have a goal for the menu. COVID has really put a challenge with that. I'm trying to get our food and such in. But day to day, I'm also managing a lot of the schools, elementary schools. We also have two other elementary managers, so making sure that the elementary schools have the support they need to be successful with the meal distribution. So I mean that's a lot of what I deal with is managing those elementary schools. We have 39,000 students in our district, a lot of which have some food allergies. So managing accommodations when the parents want it. It's a lot of what I'm dealing with right now. So you may have a lot of students with food allergies, but the parents may either choose to send food in or they may want accommodations because they just can't afford to buy food for their child. So we try the best we can to be able to provide accommodations for that. So looking for food that, whether it be through Gordon Food Services or our vendor, or I've actually gone to Walmart several times or Meijer throughout the year to get some of the specialty items for our kids. So trying to manage that inventory and just coming up with a system that works in the COVID world to be able to help meet the needs of those students. So it's interesting, it's fun. Also, right now I have some dietetic interns in, so I'm trying to offer an in-person experience for the students. Is exciting because a lot of them have been turned away from those in-person experiences at their rotations. So
So how many registered dietitians work with you, or are you the only one for the district?
I'm the only one for 55 schools. But that's okay. And that's where it's great to be able to have. If Elena is my boss, the food service director, she is amazing. So she's worked in school nutrition 25 plus years. We have the assistant food service director that's also worked in schools, about the same amount of time. So leaning on them, leaning on our people that order in the food and help to working with our commissary team who put together the meals for the elementary schools. So we do have literally this assembly line. Think of I'm going to date myself, but the I Love Lucy show. Remember, like the assembly line with her like putting together the chocolate. We try to have not have it, go off the end and be eating it as they go, but it's literally that assembly line. Working with with that team, like how can they create some eye appealing food with the kind of the constraints that we have there at the commissary because we're not able to cook. That's the challenge right now. We can't cook the food there. We'd love to get some equipment where we could, so we could try to offer minimally processed, better quality items. So trying to hopefully get back to, after COVID transitions out. Want to get back to the garden bars that we used to have. It was an exciting way to be able to introduce the kids to fruits and vegetables and give a lot more variety and things in a more eye appealing way, at the elementary level at least.
So how are your students in person, or were they in person, or are they virtual still?
Well, right now we're in summer. We are in actual in-person summer school. We have a variety. Is the challenge that COVID put forth is that a lot of the kids are behind. So we have a huge task of trying to accommodate for the multiple programs going on for summer school. They are in person. They were virtual a good half of the year. Into the fall, we tried to transition back in, and then our numbers spiked again. So the superintendent dropped it back down to all virtual. After the new year, we were hybrid, so we were half and half. So there were some kids that were still 100% remote, and others that came in school half of the time. So there's 2 days a week they were in person, and then after spring break, then we went to 4.5 days in person for elementary, and then 5 days a week for secondary. So it's been an interesting year. We've had a lot of changes in schedules. and how we do things, how we serve. But we were serving curbside since March 17th. 2020. So we had to make that quick transition, figuring out what the heck we're going to do and how we're going to serve the meals to kids at the curbside. It's
So
been an
what did
interesting
that?
year and a half.
So what
Pardon?
did that, oh, I'm sorry, what did that transition look like from having to, feed kids in person at the lunch line to now I have to pack up their food and give it to them when their parents drive up?
Organized chaos. It was, I mean, I remember that powwow meeting. We're like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And just really thinking quickly on our feet that we know we can't be serving hot food. Obviously, how can we serve things grab and go, at the door, using what we still had in inventory. So we still had our commissary team, staffed, making things, whether it be sandwiches, things that they could heat and eat at home. So we had to come up with cooking instructions, actually more reheating instructions for the parents at home. Coming up with, okay, what are the allergies in those foods that we're sending home to? Learning, you know, as we go along, how to pack the bags, because some things that you have your item that is, it could slice through the bag. I'll tell you that. We had these plastic bags, these thank you bags you get at the grocery store that are very delicate. So some of the items that we're packing really quick, and all of a sudden we notice at the end that there's a hole in it. So learning as we go, like how to do things better, more efficiently. Um, I mean, because we were flying, building the plane as we're flying it, shall we say. It was a challenging process.
Yeah. So like you said, you're one registered dietitian looking over 39,000 students in 55 schools. So do you think it would make your job easier at all having another registered dietitian work with you? Or do you think it is manageable for one person to look after that many
It would be
meals?
nice to have another person, if anything, just bouncing ideas off of and helping another set of eyes, quite honestly. I am one person, two sets of eyes, one set of eyes, I should say, um, so it would be nice to be able to have an extra person. But the school budget's only budget so far. So I'm
Yeah,
just thankful that they budget for me, quite honestly.
definitely. So do you communicate with dietitians with other districts to see how they're doing with the pandemic? And how did that look like with transitioning to, I guess, helping feed students when we transitioned?
And definitely, there's the School Nutrition Association. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's a national organization similar to our academy. And then there's similar to the state affiliates, there's Illinois School Nutrition Association. So they have had town halls throughout this entire time. And a lot of it's like sounding boards, like learning from each other. I was on a panel, I think it was back in winter, it's winter time. Essentially, what are other schools doing? How are you surviving throughout all this? And just sharing what we're doing. And then there's a couple other schools sharing the same thing. That was just on one of their winter conferences. But throughout the town halls, there have been opportunities where we can share our frustrations, share our concerns, share our successes too. Because I mean, over what I saw throughout all of this. We had our secondary world and we had our elementary world before COVID. Thanks to COVID, we had a lot of melding of the forces, shall we say, because we had to spread the love. We had our secondaries, we knew they were shut down, that first half of the year. They were not providing any in-school meals. So what do we do with the staff? We want to keep our staff employed. So they were working in the elementary world. So given that, there's a lot of friendships that were made. So that is a huge success, which we shared with other districts, as well as a few of the things that we were successful with, and also some challenges. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was really helpful to have like that sounding board, and I could even easily just pick up the phone, and call some of the local districts, and because I want to know, like, for food allergies, especially, like, how are they managing? Some schools absolutely did not provide any accommodations, and others were trying to provide some, within a reasonable amount.
Yeah. And then I know you said you had interns, which is exciting for someone like me who's interested
Yay!
in school nutrition. So what do you want your interns to take away when they lead your rotation?
A lot of it depends on what I try to leave it open to them. Like, what do they want to learn? A lot of them are just, And some of them are meal accommodations. Some are when you're working with food allergies. Some are just, how does, school nutrition work in general? So the intern that just left, she was at the very end of her practice, and she was interested in gardening. And so she actually came up with some gardening lessons and gardening activity, tying in nutrition, school nutrition education, and then how can we use that, garden within the school meal service. We hope to get back to that. We have had that in the past. Others are more interested in just more like the back end, like the financial aspects. So it depends on what the student is. I try to tailor it to their likes and their wants, and I'm still meeting the needs of their program. So I'm not too rigid with it.
So, what is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is being able to serve the families and actually serve the children and seeing their eyes light up when we're able to provide them with some good meals, especially now with COVID. I get to do meal box distribution tomorrow, so it's fun to be able to provide like that basic need of food to the families and just interacting with them.
Yeah. So, do you think that having, that face-to-face experience with students will give a spike in the dietetic career because students now are knowing what a dietitian or a nutritionist is?
I think for sure it will help. I actually was able to talk with the eighth graders as part of it. They call it Ignite program. I was it was usually like a face-to-face thing, but it was like this big Zoom panel where they learned about different health education, health professions. So being a dietitian being one of them. So a lot of them had some great questions about what does a dietitian do, providing that background about, dietitians aren't just in hospitals or aren't just in um, actually just in food service and like in say in a restaurant. So having my face out there and being, working with the district, I think could help because it's even like when I was working in the hospital, like, oh, you're the food police. Like, no, I'm not. I do a little more than that. So there's a lot of, I think, misconceptions about what dietitians do. So having that face, put, face to your profession really helps. And also have with a smile. So and have fun with what you do.
Definitely. And I guess circling back, I know that the headquarters for the academy is in Chicago.
Yes.
So do you think that helps at all having that support, right in your backyard in case if you had a question or stuff like that being the president, or do you think it has like no bearing?
Quite honestly, since we live in the virtual world, I've been to the academy's office. It's pretty cool. It's actually right downtown. But knowing that I could even just pick up the phone or connect with them virtually, I think they're available to anybody. Doesn't matter what state you're in. It's just kind of fun being up a train right away or about 40 miles outside the city where you can go downtown. But they are actually a lot of the people that work for the academy work remotely. So I mean, you have that main office area downtown, but a lot of them are national and they just work remote. So they're a nationwide organization, and I think they're available whenever you need them.
Cool. And then I forgot to ask this earlier, but is being a president a full-time job? Or are you like, or can you, do other things at that time?
It's an extra job. Yes, I mean I've obviously worked full time when I was doing it. But you just have to make that commitment knowing that you have multiple calls that you got to be on. You want to be that support for your committee members and your membership. So I think going into the position knowing that, I mean, I want to say it's a full-time job, but it is a time commitment that you want to make sure that you give your all to, quite honestly, to do it well.
Definitely. And then what kind of advice do you have for students who aren't a part of the academy and they're kind of on the fence about joining?
They are not a part of the academy.
Nope.
Just throw your hat into the ring, quite honestly. And there are a lot of benefits to being an academy member, especially a student member. The the dues are less. I mean, it's just a way to learn about how the academy can help you in the profession. There's a lot of resources that they do provide. Um, whether it be like the evidence-based library, there's, of course, the journal and everything, but there's also just the DPGs is another great support they do offer. Same with the MIGs, so the member interest groups. So they are trying to diversify and expand their reach. But as a student, you can, join a lot of like those different entities, at a minimal cost to essentially see what's going to work for you. And it's a great way to just get involved and learn more about the profession and actually grow. In addition to the DPGs, the evidence-based library, there's also the credentials. I'm sorry, the credentialing program, certificate programs. So once you get your baseline, you get your foundation, you get if you pass that RD exam, you can find your specialty. If sports nutrition is your specialty, they have a certificate for that. If renal or clinical, so there's a lot of different ways that you can grow, and the academy, I think, provides the resource to help you do that.
Awesome. And then I guess to finish up, what kind of advice do you have for students that are going to be applying for their internship in the fall? I'm sorry, in February.
In February, be open to new opportunities. Quite honestly, I mean, Benedictine was not on my radar at all. So I had like the first four, and that I applied to. If they don't fall your way, you could have your day that you cry, and then you have to pick yourself up again and try again. Just, I mean, you've worked so hard to get through that program, to get through your 4 years, and knowing if that's the direction you really want to go is that the RD program. Just to keep that first and foremost, and just make it happen. I've seen a lot of people go through that internship program, and they just never take the RD exam, or they let it go by the wayside. And that's a lot of time and energy that just they let it kind of fizzle away. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
no problem. Reach out with anything. You have any questions beyond tonight? You can provide my information. I'm pretty accessible, so feel free to provide that to your members. Okay, but thanks for having me.
I appreciate that, and there's so much good stuff to unpack, and I think I have a lot of interests that align, but the students have a lot of great stuff, and I really appreciate that you touched on the affiliates, because I think a lot of students have questions and don't really understand the academy beyond the national organization. And I really commend you, and I hope students take a look at the work for engaging students at that level, because so many questions and so many answers can come from getting involved at that low level.
For sure.
And similarly, like you were talking about, during COVID, the number one question that we get during a lot of our courses and programs from students during COVID has been, hey, my in-person opportunities are limited. What can I do? And I've always put the ownership on the students, because there's so much innovation at that level of finding that opportunity. But like you're saying, I think there is some for the dietitians to take ownership of teaching the next generation, of let me create these opportunities as well.
I do believe that, I mean, being a servant leader and being able to be there to help, the next level, because I'm only going to be doing this for so many years. There's going to be somebody coming up behind me. So we want to make sure that we're providing that experience and education to those that are coming up the ranks. I'm very thankful to my district that I'm able to offer those in-person experiences, because I've had a lot of, the students come to me, it's like scrambling. They're trying to find an opportunity to fill the gap that was now, they have weeks they got to fill. They have to meet this program, deadline. I'm like, okay, well, let's try to make this happen. So I've had actually University of Alabama, Birmingham, a lady from that rotation. It's a distance program. She reached out to me. I'm like, where do you live? You have to be in person. And she's right down the road. So there's a lot of distance learning programs that are, reaching out to the district, and I'm happy to be able to provide that opportunity for them when I can.
That's so beautiful and wonderful. And like you mentioned, we'll share your info, and I appreciate you sitting down with us. For all those listening, tune back each week. We highlight another awesome dietitian with some great exposure. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Emily and Carl. Enjoy the night.
Thank you.